I'm Brandi Kruse. Coming up today on Undivided, a Washington state teacher is accused of using students as soldiers for the Democratic Party. I've never seen anything quite like this. Plus, Democrats in Olympia move forward with a bill to erode parental rights, as well as a bill that will make homelessness a protected class. That and much more coming up today on Undivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month by signing up at undividedpod.com. Hello, and welcome to Undivided on this final, Thursday? Yeah, final live show of the week. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. I'm Brandi Kruse. I'll say, Nicole and I are exhausted today. We both, without talking to each other, did the same thing last night. We were just watching wall-to-wall coverage of this crash between regional jet and helicopter in D.C., and I'll just say, I have a lot to say about the political responses to it. This isn't a national breaking news show. There's nothing I'm going to tell you about this crash that you wouldn't, you shouldn't probably watch somewhere else. So I was glued to it. One, because I just booked my brother. I'm going to D.C. next week, which we won't have a show on Thursday because I'm going to be in D.C. for LibertyCon. And so I was like, great, airport I'm flying into next week. Can't wait. But I just booked my brother because he's going to join me in D.C., a flight on an American Airlines regional jet into D.C. And I was like, geez, I hope he doesn't want to cancel. But it's insane. The whole situation is insane. The consensus I've seen from experts is how in the world could that have happened? You have pretty often in D.C., I was talking to some folks who work for members of Congress and, fly in and out of that airport all the time. And so you always see, military helicopters in D.C. for a variety of reasons. Not the least of which is like the president's always on a helicopter. And so you see them. It's not unusual to see them as you're coming and going. But for it to crash into a jet is obviously crazy. I think we have the video of it here. But, it's just insane. I will say, just from my perspective, before we move on to some Washington state stories, I actually thought the person who responded the best in terms of information to the public, not making things political, etc., was DC Mayor Muriel Bowser, which I hate to give her credit for anything, but she was the most on topic, was the least political, was trying to keep things moving along during her press conference last night. And so I thought she did a fantastic job. So I'll give her credit where credit is due. Someone who did a less fantastic job, Donald Trump. I've said I'll call balls and strikes when it comes to the president of the United States. He comes out in this press conference this morning, and I actually thought it's one of those things with Trump was like, just stop talking. Just stop talking. That's always been one of his primary issues. He comes out and he has a moment of silence and he, very thoughtful, very caring. At that point, there's still bodies in the river and loved ones who are obviously beside themselves and, don't even have a list of the victims. And then he just rants into his sort of like blaming Obama and blaming Biden for DEI and air traffic control. It's like, I'm happy to have those conversations. But at the same time, like I said, there's still bodies in the river and just completely inappropriate time. I just hate when he does that because then he just gives the left and the media so much ammunition to go after him. In fact, he was asked this. Is this the Caitlin Collins? Yeah, Caitlin Collins with CNN. And look, honestly, if I had been in the room, I would have asked him a similar type of question to Caitlin Collins.
On DEI and the claims that you've made, are you saying this crash was somehow caused and the result of diversity hiring? And what evidence have you seen to support these claims?
It just could have been. We have a high standard. We've had a much higher standard than anybody else. And there are things where you have to go by brain power. You have to go by psychological quality. And psychological quality is a very important element of it. These are various very powerful tests that we put to use, and they were terminated by Biden. And Biden went by a standard that's the exact opposite. So we don't know, but we do know that you had two planes at the same level. You had a helicopter and a plane. That shouldn't have happened. And we'll see. We're going to look into that, and we're going to see. But certainly for an air traffic controller, we want the brightest, the smartest, the sharpest. We want somebody that's psychologically superior, and that's what we're going to have.
Yeah, sorry, I thought that was Caitlin Collins. It was some other brown-haired reporter in the front row. Look, I agree with him that obviously This doesn't happen without incompetence. This doesn't happen without multiple failures. There are so many things, technology, that are in place to prevent something like this from happening. So it doesn't happen without incompetence. And whether that incompetence is the result of lax hiring standards, I guess we'll find out. We'll get to the bottom of, was it the helicopter? Was it air traffic control? I tend to think probably the helicopter pilots. But we'll find out. I hate when he does that. It's at the beginning of the things. There's people still in the water. There's families grieving. Leave it at your nice. We're on top of this. Here's what's happening now, just like Muriel Bowser did. Like, here I am off the top of the show giving Muriel Bowser more credit than President Donald Trump. Also crazy for Sean Duffy. Brand new, like within hours, Secretary of the Department of Transportation.
Hours, yeah.
And then he's got this major incident, the first commercial airline incident like that in the United States since 2009. Just wild stuff. And your heart breaks for the families, hearing all the stories. You were telling me one story this morning you saw on the news of this, because it was gymnasts on the, or ice skaters. Ice skaters.
The U.S. ice skating.
One of them opted not to get on the plane because his dog.
No, they wouldn't allow him on the plane because he had a dog carrier that was too big for this regional jet, I think. Yeah. And so he rented a car and
to drive. I mean, just stories like that. So it's all heartbreaking. Wild. Like I said, we're not a national news show. I'm not going to give you any context into this that's going to be better than anything you're going to see on national news. Just some thoughts on the political response.
It's like they give him a time limit and put as many words in here as you can. I don't get it either.
I know. He's been doing so good too. And it's fine, we all trip up. It's just like somebody needs to tell him, "Hey, stop while you're ahead." And we're going to do 3 minutes with you, Mr. President. And then you pass it off to the people who are dealing with the investigation.
Old man talking over coffee about what he saw on the news. It's
it's just too much. Anyway, if you disagree, feel free to let me know. Let's get into some statewide news. We'll be talking quite a bit about that. I'll say I actually feel better about my flight. I am very scared of flying, as Nicole knows, as my friends and family know. Despise flying. I actually feel better about it because the chances of that happening twice in the course of a week at the same airport is very, very unlikely. So I kind of feel better about it. But it's just horrible.
I was just there. I mean, it's a short runway. They slam on the brakes because I think they said it's the shortest runway in the country, and you have to do this sharp turn at the end to get on the runway over the river. So it is one of the more difficult runways in the country. And
great.
Yeah, I just remember looking at that water as I was coming in and driving around, but it looks so cold. All those responders, let alone the victims. I mean, wow, it's cold water. It was a little over freezing yesterday, I think, or last night, but that water was still freezing.
Yeah,
very
first
cold.
Responders. I mean, you got to give it out to them. I mean, they were on the water right away. But we'll go on to some state news and stuff happening in the legislature. I've never seen anything quite like this. So on the education front, and we'll get to failing test scores in a second because there's this big national report that we want to go through. So there's kind of this group on X that posts things related to the decline of our state's education system. This particular post has gone crazy viral. It's being shared nationally, and for good reason. There's this mom in Vancouver, Washington. So she tweets this out last night. "My son goes to Fort Vancouver High School. He just sent me pictures of an assignment his history teacher is giving them. She wants the students to write our representatives and tell them to reject House Bill 1584. I am livid right now. This is not okay." So for a little context, I don't know, maybe House Bill 1584 is something, non-political. Maybe it's a bill about like a nickname for the state or something like that. Oh, no. It's an election integrity bill. House Bill 1584 would revert Washington state to in-person voting. So this parent posts the virtual, it's from their virtual system where they submit assignments online. It says, "As a future voter, it is your right and civic duty to participate in local elections. Part of that is telling your representatives how you would like them to vote on certain bills for state or federal laws. You live in the 17th legislative district, and here are your representatives." That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. Teaching them civics, very high level. Hey, here's your elected representatives. Learn how the system works. But then it goes on to say, "Below is a script. If you contact your representatives and would like to ask them to maintain the right to vote by mail, use the script below," and then literally provides a script for this student to contact their representatives. It says, "Hello, my name is blank, and I am a student in Vancouver, Washington. I am calling to ask you to reject House Bill 1584. Please keep my future right to be able to vote by mail intact, or to be able to vote by mail-in ballot. Thank you. Literally giving students, according to this mother, high school students, a script to do the work of the Democratic Party. That's nuts. I mean, we know that there's political and social indoctrination happening in our schools. Of course, we know that. We give you many examples. We did an entire documentary about it, and we're going to do more. But I have never seen a teacher on a very politically driven topic and bill, election integrity, not only tell students to write their elected leaders, but to give them a script where they just insert their name to tell them to preserve vote by mail. That's nuts. Now, okay, so we're taking this parent at her word. I mean, she included all the screenshots. Could there have been a separate assignment that gave him a script to support 1584? I suppose. We have reached out to the Fort Vancouver School District this morning to ask them, WTF? But I mean, this should be a fireable offense. It won't be, because the union allows teachers to get away with anything that they see fit. I am perfectly fine with encouraging students to engage in the democratic process and to teach them how that happens. For instance, we had a teacher on, it was last year, the year before, who, they have this assignment where students come up with a bill to put before the legislature, and the students decided they wanted that bill to be about teaching pledge education in schools, where you actually teach the meaning behind the Pledge of Allegiance. That's very different. To put the ball in the students' courts, for them to get excited about presenting a bill to the legislature in Olympia, to go down there to testify on something very non-controversial, although too controversial for Democrats to pass it. This is totally different. One of the most controversial political issues of our time, voter integrity. And you have a teacher providing high school students with a script so that they can oppose House Bill 1584 and ask their elected leaders, I'm a student. Please keep my future right to be able to vote by mail-in ballot. Just insane. I've never seen anything quite like it. So we'll see what the school district has to say. I can't think of a legitimate excuse for something like this. Unless there was a separate assignment that could be done in lieu of this assignment that gave them the ability and a script to email their legislators and say they supported 1584. I still think it's kind of weird considering how controversial the issue is, but that really is the only scenario that to me would save this teacher. But again, first of all, they're not going to fire this teacher. And second of all, they'll never tell us even if they do, because we don't have a right to know any disciplinary action that happens against teachers. But all this is going on. We saw that last night. And of course, it comes on the heels of this national report card that shows that America continues to fall behind as a country for other nations, which is problematic, right? But it is not just fall behind. I mean, plummeting test scores, plummeting capability for basic standards. And I'll get into Washington State in a moment, but nationally is not good either. I think Washington is really dragging down the national overall score quite a bit. So this is the nation's report card. Let's just compare 8th grade math and 8th grade reading. So you can see this graph, if you're watching the show, it actually represents two things. So you'll see Washington test scores are reflected in the yellow line, and then the black line is national test scores. But honestly, the trend is very similar. And you look from roughly 17, it has been a fast decline. So declining even before the pandemic, mind you, because they want to blame all of this on the pandemic. So huge declines in math, huge declines in reading, and it actually looks like Washington State has a more rapid decline in both between 2022 and 2024 than even the national decline, although they're still very bad. But so bad that even the Seattle Times finally has to do something about it. Even the Seattle Times, whose editorial board decided that they were going to endorse Chris Rakedall despite not endorsing him pre-primary because they said that he basically failed at his job as the superintendent of public instruction at just the basics of getting test scores up, enrollment, all the metrics that matter. After 2 terms, schools were doing worse, but they still endorsed him anyway because, oh my God, we cannot have anyone even remotely resembling a conservative in charge of our public school system. And now the Seattle Times comes out. Nation's report card reveals a math problem in Washington. 71%, it says, of Washington 8th graders were not proficient in math, compared to 58% in 2013. So in 2013, it was already bad. 58% in 2013 of 8th graders were not proficient in math, okay? That's already embarrassing. More than half not proficient. And now it's 71%. Now it's 71%. I'll keep reading that. The percentage of 8th graders performing at or above the NAEP proficiency level shrank by 12 points over the past decade, while the national decline for this group was 7 points. So we are declining in the area of math much more rapidly than nationally. And then 69% of Washington 8th graders were not proficient in reading, compared to 58% in 2013. So you're seeing declines across the board. So 2013, already bad. 58% not proficient in math or reading. And now we've got 71% not proficient in math, 69% not proficient in reading. And I would also note, like, when you look at other states, right? You know, Washington State, because they take so much of your money, Washington State has a very well-funded education system. Washington State has very well-paid teachers. And what has happened, if you look at, they're comparing 2013 to today, right? So you're seeing this huge decline, significant, double digits when it comes to math. You know what during that period of time rapidly increased? Anybody want to guess? School funding. So they want to act whenever there are bad test scores. Whenever there's a bad report about academic outcomes in Washington public schools, what do they always do? Well, they always say, we need more money. We need to pay teachers more. We need to increase staff. We need more funding for this, more money for this. The amount of money we spend on public education and per student in Washington State has risen exorbitantly since 2013. Because remember, we had the McCleary decision. It was a mandate that public education had to be fully funded. So even as a result of just that, we've poured hundreds of millions of additional dollars into education each year, only to have worse results. So when they come to you and they say, we need more money, you know that more money is not going to equal better outcomes. And so you say that to them. And if they say, how do you know that? Well, the last 10 years shows that. You have way more money. Funding for education has skyrocketed, and educational outcomes are worse than ever. So clearly more money, and you could apply that to many things. We spend more money than we've ever spent on homelessness. Homelessness is worse than ever. You spend more money than we've ever spent on behavioral health and substance abuse. Both of those issues are worse than ever. And it's because the government can't solve anything. The government doesn't want to solve anything. Our government in Washington State is about taking as much of your money as possible to pay it out to their cronies and allies and to the unions. So that's what we're seeing. We talk about all the time, homeless industrial complex. That's what we see there. All the entities that are getting tens of millions of dollars from the state of Washington, basically blank checks for failure. And we can't take that money away from all these groups and all our buddies who we're enriching. And they're never going to solve it, because if they solve it, then that check will go away and we can't have that. And then with the educational outcomes, it's not about serving students. If it were about serving students, they would all be saying, Democrats would be saying exactly what I'm saying now. That our academic success is in the toilet and we're spending more money than ever. So clearly more money isn't the solution. If it was about students, they would be saying exactly what I'm saying. But it's not about students. What is it about? It's about the union. It's about pleasing the most powerful union in the state of Washington, the union that dumps money into their political campaigns, the union that supports progressive causes, the Washington Education Association. That's what it's about. As long as they're funding the Washington Education Association via teacher raises and all these things, Democrats are going to say they're doing a good job, that everything's great. And the Washington Education Association, they have no care or concern. Obviously, I would say the same thing about them. They don't care about educational outcomes. The WEA does not care about academic success of students. If they cared about academic success of students, they'd be saying the exact thing that I'm saying now. But their retort to this will be teacher pay. Their retort to this, unbelievably, because you can't make this argument. I would love for one of them to sit in front of me and make this argument. Their retort is going to be, we need more money and we'll do a better job. We haven't done a better job for the last 15 years that you've been shoveling more money at us, but we'll do a better job this time. Absolutely unreal. And I love that Travis Couture, State Rep Travis Couture, called them out on this. The NAEP report card on education outcomes came out. Washington continues to have some of the most abysmal scores in reading and math in roughly 3 decades. OSPI and Dems are failing our kids. Instead of fixing academics, they, them, plan to make it better by erasing parental rights tomorrow. Oh, that's funny. We'll talk about erasing parental rights in just a moment because they are moving forward with erasing parental rights. Now, we reached out to OSPI on a couple things today, and so we'll talk to you about that. This first one, OSPI released a statement about the abysmal report card thing. All data compels us, this is from OSPI, all data compels us to take a much deeper examination of our approach to math in late elementary and middle school. For Washington State to maintain our economic excellence in software, engineering, and advanced manufacturing, we have to make significant gains in elementary and middle school math in order to set up our students for maximum success in high school and beyond. Yeah, I agree. I agree with that so far. Okay, what's the kicker here? To make progress, Superintendent Reichdahl has an initial plan, fully fund. Oh, there it is. I'm reading this cold because Nicole just put it in there for me. Oh, see, did I not just... I didn't even know. I predicted it. Fully fund basic education, prioritize regional professional development work, increase investments in the state's learning assistance program, and dedicate more instructional time to math in elementary school. That last one I can get on board with. Dedicate more instructional time to math in elementary school instead of
less sex education.
Less sex education, less pride education. Yeah. Good God. But of course, Kruse Reichdahl, who's in his 3rd term as the superintendent of public instruction, whose schools are being funded at a level that is way higher than they were when he first took office, says, if you only give me more money, I'll do better. It's a joke at this point. I mean, it's serious in terms of the lack of outcome for kids and what's happening in public education. But you could sit any member of the WEA, any Democratic lawmaker here, Kruse Reichdahl here, and they cannot make that argument make sense. Because the retort is, you've had more money and the outcomes have been worse. And they have no argument for that. So the key is, obviously, end the political and social indoctrination and the focus on DEI, the focus on lowering standards because you think that instead of lifting all students up and trying to make sure if there's students or a group of students that's falling behind, that you focus on making sure you lift them up so everyone can succeed together. Your focus is on pushing everyone down. Your focus is on lowering expectations. No one can fail. No one should get a failing grade. Oh, there's no consequences if you don't show up. That's all right. We'll baby you because you'll be babied in the real world. Wild stuff. We'll reach out. Reichdahl's office, I think they're ready to cut us off. They responded to us the other day, but he used to be willing to come on. I don't think we're going to see that from him anymore. But I invite any member of the WEA who wants to make the argument that this academic failure can be solved with more money. I invite any of you to come on the show. We can have an hour-long conversation. I'm open to hearing your arguments. Just know that the argument that you need more money to improve education will not fly with us. All right, we're going to continue on this parental rights bend because as we expected, the bill to erode parental rights has advanced out of a House committee. So we'll discuss that as well as another bad bill, another bill on our list of bad bills that has advanced out of committee. First, I've encouraged you guys to take the First Mark Challenge, firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. It's such a no-brainer, you guys. We all need insurance. You might think you have good insurance or a good price. You've been using the same person for a long time. what does it hurt to double check? I mean, First Mark has been an insurance broker in our area for a long time, and all I hear is good stuff. I have never heard one negative thing about First Mark from any undivided viewer or listener who's taken the First Mark challenge. It just takes a little bit of time. It's completely free. You schedule an appointment with them, talk to them over the phone about your current insurance, discuss maybe any changes you have coming up that, are going to maybe increase rates or whatever you have going on. Car that's difficult to insure, whatever it is, they're going to go out, they're going to shop the market for you, and they're going to come back and say, hey, either we can get you better insurance or we can't. Maybe they can get you better insurance at a better price. That's the case for a lot of undivided subscribers who they're better insured after talking to First Mark, and they're paying a lower price. And it's like, that's such a no-brainer. Spencer, they saved him $1,600 a year. Chad says they're saving him $100 a month. That adds up. I mean, who among us could not use an extra $1,200 or $1,600 a year? So take the First Mark challenge today. FirstMarkInsurance.com, FirstMarkInsurance.com. The very best part is they work for you. All right. Look, that example we just gave of the teacher down in Vancouver, Washington, who is using students as soldiers for the Democratic Party to push their agenda, to push back against bills. That's exactly the reason why every single one of you have to get involved in the legislative process in Olympia. Because it comes down to sometimes who can scream the loudest. And if you've got teachers who are using students to push back against bad bills, well, there's no excuse for every single one of us to push back against the bills that we think are bad too. I mean, I said on the show yesterday, I gave you guys a handy list. It's on Patreon and Locals right now. You can go click on it. You just click the link and you can hit, email my legislators. They make it so easy to do that. They really do. You can say, tell the committee I'm opposed to this. And those numbers matter. It's like 30 seconds a bill of time. I mean, if the teacher gets creative in Vancouver and can make kids do this, certainly we need to push back and do it as well. Because the left's good at this. I mean, the left is good at this. And the right, or just the common sense middle, needs to get better at it as well. People who have been apolitical, because there's a couple bills that are now advancing and they're just horrible bills. And, I don't know if Democrats would listen to reason. I don't know if a million Washingtonians emailed them today and said, don't pass this. I don't even know if they'd listen at this point, but it's certainly worth a try. So House Bill 1296 has advanced out of the Education Committee. So House Bill 1296 and its partner bill over in the Senate, Senate Bill 5181, those are the two bills that would amend the Parental Bill of Rights that was just passed into law last year, just ruled constitutional by a King County judge that says parents have a right to know what's going on with their kids at school, but the Democrats can't handle that. They can't handle voters telling them what to do via initiative. They can't handle a King County judge saying that Initiative 2081 was constitutional. So right now, they're just going back and they're eroding it. And they're taking out all the key provisions of the Parental Bill of Rights, and they have no shame. They think they can parent better than you can and that they know what's best for your kids at school. So all the stuff in the Parental Bill of Rights about teachers have to notify parents of medical issues going on at school, or of mental health issues, or gender dysphoria. I mean, right now, schools have to do it, but how long that's going to last, I'm not sure, because not only are they trying to erode it and change the law, they put an emergency clause on it so it would take effect immediately. So that's disappointing, but not surprising that Democrats have advanced that bill out of committee. Here is one thing that is crazy. Are you ready for this? I don't know if you're ready for this. I don't even know if Nicole's ready for this, or if you even know about it, because I just threw it in the show. So at this committee hearing, there's, room for amendments to bills, right? Like, oh gosh, if we can't defeat the bill, and Republicans will try to introduce some amendments to strengthen the bill, right? So we just talked about Representative Travis Couture. So he introduced an amendment that I just snotted a little bit because I'm just anticipating that should be so non-controversial. But of course, this is Olympia, and everything that Republicans want to do when it comes to protecting kids and protecting parents is controversial. So here's honest to God what this amendment from Representative Travis Couture did. In a nutshell, it changed the law. So right now under law, it says the current law, school districts must, at the first opportunity, but in all cases within 48 hours of receiving a report alleging sexual misconduct by a school employee, notify the parents or legal guardians of a student alleged to be the victim, target, or recipient of an allegation of sexual misconduct by a school employee. So basically, state law says at the first opportunity, but in all cases within 48 hours, if your kid is alleging that they're the victim of sexual misconduct from a school employee, Travis Couture's amendment would have said, crossed out all that jargon and said, immediately. School districts must immediately notify parents or legal guardians of a student alleged to be the victim, target, or recipient of an allegation of sexual misconduct by a school employee. So instead of at the first opportunity, but within 48 hours, no. If your student is potentially the victim of sexual misconduct perpetrated by a school employee, why would it not be an immediate notification to that child's parents? Immediate. That's all Travis wanted to do. Amend it to say immediate instead of at the first available opportunity. You know, maybe after lunch. Maybe after you go out and have lunch or recess or something, you might want to call a parent and tell them that their child is saying that a teacher sexually abused them. Rejected. That amendment was rejected by the Democrats on the committee. I mean, and they want to talk about, 1296 being about keeping kids safe. Keeping kids safe at school by keeping secrets from their parents, including apparently if the child says that a teacher is guilty of sexual misconduct. Yeah, they can pocket that for 48 hours and then tell parents, as opposed to, as any reasonable person would expect, telling them immediately. That's shocking. That is shocking. I don't even know what to make of that. I didn't know Travis Couture was introducing that amendment, but I cannot imagine. I was waiting for the video to post. It takes a little bit for TVW to process videos for the hearings that happen. I can't wait to hear what the arguments against the amendment were. Cannot wait to hear. I'm sure they're like, well, we do it as fast as we can. They're going to do it as fast as they can. This is an unnecessary amendment. I guarantee that's what it is. But it's like, okay, if it's unnecessary, if they already are doing it as fast as they can, why not just change the law to immediately? Notify parents immediately. Because they don't want to notify parents about anything. And they certainly want to make sure that teachers are properly protected. We've got to make sure teachers are protected, not kids. They don't want to protect kids at all. So the other bill that has advanced out of committee, the implications of this are going to be so profound. It is House Bill 1380. Again, it's on our list of bad bills. And it is the bill that essentially makes homelessness a protected class. And it gives homeless individuals more of an ability to sue cities and counties, police departments, who they feel like have targeted them unreasonably. They're told, oh, you can't camp here. Hey, can't camp in this park where kids play. I'm going to sue you. That's unreasonable. Literally, Democrats in Olympia want to make it more difficult for cities and counties to clear homeless encampments and want to make it easier for homeless people to sue if they feel as if their rights have been infringed. In a state with one of the worst homeless crises in the nation, this is the kind of stuff they're prioritizing. And what really gets me is the way they spin all of this, right? The spin is unbelievable. So I'll read a little bit from the bill. It says, evictions in homelessness are increasing and are at unprecedented levels across our state, demanding urgent action. Hey, I agree with that. Yeah, what kind of urgent action do you have in mind? It says, the absence of cohesive state guidance has resulted in an arbitrary patchwork of legislation regarding the use of public spaces. So they're saying, oh, homelessness is so bad, but you have all these cities and counties who have these arbitrary rules for when you can camp somewhere, where you can camp, how you can camp, etc. So they're going to fix that because that'll make things a lot better, right? It says, state and local governments have a shared responsibility in addressing the homelessness crisis and transitioning unsheltered residents into housing. The legislature intends to encourage local governments to enact objectively reasonable time, place, and manner regulations to preserve public peace, health, and safety for the benefit of the entire community. You see what I mean by the spin? Oh, now it's a public safety bill too. Now it's a public safety bill. So the gist of the bill is, again, they can color it and say this is about peace and safety and the public and all this stuff and working together cohesively. No, this is about the state telling cities and counties how they have to deal with homeless encampments in their jurisdiction. This is about far left progressives who believe that leaving homeless people in place is somehow helping them, is somehow progressive, is somehow going to better their circumstances. This is about tying the hands of cities and counties that are fed up and they're taking a more aggressive stance when it comes to homeless camps in public places. So I got to play you a little bit of the back and forth between Democrats and Republicans on the House Housing Committee, which is where this was heard. So again, here's a Democratic state lawmaker who's essentially, kind of saying, she packages it in a nice bow, but kind of admitting that, look, this is about us helping these cities and counties understand the right way to do things.
I think what I see here is we're looking to do the right thing, and there maybe need to be more education for our cities and mayors to appreciate that this is a tool that they can use. It also, I think, strikes a balance as far as making sure that our unhoused residents are protected against unreasonable enforcement of ordinances.
How condescending is that? We just need to help them understand. We just need more education for our dumb mayors and county executives to help them understand why what we're doing is better, why our will as state lawmakers should be thrust onto their communities. It's just fascinating to listen to this. This is Democratic State Representative Mia Gregerson, who, again, it's like they don't understand. They have no self-awareness for some of the things they're saying.
What's not happening is we're not moving the ball fast enough, and people are still being forced to exist in public spaces. And so I know that this is a difficult conversation, and I know that asking cities to consider what we all know is in practice every day by our law enforcement, objectively reasonable, is something that every single officer uses in every single moment that they are protecting our communities.
So she says off the beginning, look, things are so bad, unfortunately, people are just having to, we don't have enough space, people have to. So because your party has failed so bad on the homeless front, because your party, which has been in charge for 40 years, most of the last 15 years in the legislature, complete unchecked power. By any standard, you're the ones who made the homeless crisis so bad. You made it so bad, and now you want to use how bad it is as an excuse to allow people to continue to live outside unchecked and to force cities and counties to deal with homelessness in the way that you see fit, as if the way that the state has dealt with homelessness has been so productive and effective. Wild. Republicans on the committee, a kind of a similar pushback among them that, look, we have spent a lot of money on housing. We've spent a lot of money on shelter. We've thrown a lot of money at the homeless crisis, and it's not getting better. And you kind of just expect these cities to just allow people to continue to park and to camp in public places.
If you go out of this building within a mile or two, you can find quite a few homeless encampments. And you can also find in the same area housing that we've paid for with the Housing Trust Fund money. And so we are not trying to stop solutions to this problem, but we are seeing some angst about this bill, and for good reason. Pierce County mayors, for instance, Fircrest, Lakewood, Puyallup, Bonnie Lake, are concerned because I know in my city we've spent millions, literally millions of dollars defending against litigation in Puyallup. And we could have spent that money helping homeless individuals, but we did not. And also, the cities of Normandy Park, Burien, Renton, Des Moines, some of them further up the freeway, have weighed in against this bill. And part of it might be because of the objectively reasonable standard that we have in this bill. Some cities are saying they think this is vague, they think this is going to cause litigation, and they're worried about the private cause of action where people can sue if they've been told, no, you can't camp here.
I can't even believe that this is a real committee hearing. I can't even believe this is a real bill. So as she mentioned, there are a few cities that are fed up, right? And that have testified against this bill. We do not want the state telling us how to deal with these homeless encampments. The state has only made the crisis worse by this hands-off approach, and we're sick of it, right? As they should have a right to do. So Burien is one of them. So Burien, it's run mostly by Democrats. There's a Democratic mayor who's sick and tired, and we've had him on the show before. And they've been pushing back because King County doesn't want to enforce their no camping ban. Well, just a few days ago, and this bill was already in existence and moving through, but just a few days ago, Burien actually strengthened its ban on camping. Basically, you just can't do it. Like, you will not set up a homeless encampment in a public place in the city of Burien. Councilwoman Stephanie Mora, who's been at the forefront of trying to crack down on the homelessness and the drug use and the crime that comes along with it, she had posted this video a couple days ago about Burien strengthening its ordinance.
Last night, the Burien City Council passed an update to our camping ordinance. What exactly does this change look like? Well, it means we will no longer allow people to sleep anywhere on public property at any time, and we don't have to provide services and we don't have to provide shelter. So in other words, it's stricter than the previous version. This morning, King County Sheriff's Office said that they would be enforcing this updated policy. I was happy to hear that they would be enforcing it. However, I'm also a little upset that it took almost a year to get here, as they stopped enforcing our less restrictive camping ordinance last year. I want others to take note of what happened here in Burien this past year. Take note of all the overdoses and the lives lost. It was never about us not being compassionate. It was never about us not providing beds. It was never about us not having a service provider. And it was never about our ordinance being unconstitutional. This is about common sense laws. I worked hard to unify our city council these past 3 years. I first proposed a camping ordinance that prohibited all public spaces from being used as campsites. This was not well received at the time. However, at the end of 2023, I was finally able to get an initial camping ordinance passed. Seeing the changes I've been advocating for finally come to fruition last night was a testament to the hard work the community, neighbors, and business owners have put in. I only have about 11 months left on council, and I'm going to keep pushing for common sense laws like this camping ordinance was just passed. I hope that other cities take note of what has happened here in Burien to see that we stood up for what we knew was right for our community. Hopefully other cities will step up with us in a single voice, say that we will protect our communities and we will not be the dumping ground for King County.
And they shouldn't have to be the dumping ground for King County. But if this bill, House Bill 1380, passes in Olympia, everyone will be a dumping ground. No city will be able to stand up for itself and say enough is enough, which is ridiculous. I mean, the idea, they call it a patchwork. We can't have that. We can't have different cities doing different things. Well, different cities have different needs. Different cities have a different scope of a problem. The issue is much different in Burien than it might be in a city in Eastern Washington. And the idea that you could have a city that has one of the worst homeless crises, it's leading to all this substance abuse issues, it's leading to crime, and you don't have the power to do something about it without a homeless person turning around and suing your city because they feel like you targeted them. That's the priority of Democrats in Olympia, to push down a state law telling these cities that only the state is to blame. The state really in Seattle and King County, but that's all the sort of same political class of the progressives who wanted a hands-off approach to homelessness. Now it's exploded to a point where cities, even Democratic-run cities, are fed up, and they're trying now finally to take a harder stance on this stuff. And the state is saying, no, you won't, not so fast. It's insane. I mean, they want chaos. Again, that's all I can believe is they want chaos. They want more homelessness. They want more crime. They want more money coming in to deal with these issues. The worse it gets, the more money they can take from you, the more money they can convince you to give to them, the more money they can push into the hands of organizations that they're affiliated with and that support their campaigns. That is the only justifiable reason for them pushing something like this. Again, it's House Bill 1380. It passed out of committee with a 9-8 vote. Democrats in support, Republicans opposed. Ridiculous. Speaking of ridiculous, Judge Bender strikes again. One of the most notorious soft on crime, pro-criminal judges in the state of Washington, Judge Joanna Bender. Our friend over at Fox 13 did a phenomenal expose on her, David Rose. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. All right, just to remind you of Judge Joanna Bender, I could sit here all day and go through all the bad ill-advised rulings that she's made when it comes to letting dangerous criminals out on house arrest, or saying, oh, you don't have to post any bail, no big deal. And of course, the predictable having those criminals go out and flee from justice or commit other violent offenses. She was the one also, we played this clip before, I'll just play it again, who, remember the 19-year-old who stabbed a handyman to death? Like viciously stabbed him to death because they got in some sort of argument, an elderly handyman. And the family didn't want the face of the murderer, the family of the murderer didn't want his face shown in court because they were very concerned that there might be some sort of retribution if his face was on TV, and Judge Bender sympathized with them and not with the victim.
This hearing isn't about me, but I will share with you that I often get death threats based on the decisions that I make, which is equally frustrating to me because I'm trying to do my job, and it should not be the responsibility of any member of the public to threaten my life because I am trying to uphold the law. So I am very empathetic to the situation that the family finds themselves in, having experienced it myself. And I understand personally how very frightening and disrupting it is, all the more so when you are also navigating this incredibly traumatic time in your family. I'm just doing my job. You're dealing with a crisis. That's a huge difference, and one for which I am very empathetic. I will also take this opportunity to editorialize that I hope that the press continues to take seriously their obligation to tell the stories of what happens in our courtroom in a fair and unbiased way, and takes every reasonable editorial action to not stir up public sentiment for revenge.
I mean, sitting there over and over about how empathetic she is for the family of a guy who stabbed someone to death with a butcher knife. I'm very empathetic of what the family's going through, of what's happening. Very empathetic of your concern that this cold-blooded killer could get death threats. I mean, this woman is off her rockers, then of course has to make it about herself. I also get death threats because I do such a shitty job at keeping the public safe. So our friend David Rose over at Fox 13, I think one of the only mainstream journalists left in Seattle who's willing to call a spade and talk about the crime crisis that we're in. So he did a report, a pretty lengthy report, we won't play all of it, but on just the latest example of Judge Joanna Bender's soft on crime approach. So 19-year-old Urias Morales Perez struck and killed 60-year-old Tim Gurmez. I might have mispronounced that. So he hit this 60-year-old man, killed him, was given low bail by Judge Bender. So he got released. Again, hit and killed someone, given very low bail, over objections by Judge Bender. Well, guess where he went after he got low bail? Well, he has fled to Mexico. Here's part of the story from David Rose.
Dashcam video from September 7th at about 10:03 p.m. shows the seconds leading up to the hit-and-run homicide of 60-year-old Tim Gurmez. 19-year-old Urias Morales Perez was on the way home from a birthday party in his 2002 Honda Civic. He stopped at the intersection of Airport Way and Rainier Avenue South, waiting for the red light to turn. Tim starts walking through the crosswalk. The light changes, but Morales Perez waits several seconds before he suddenly accelerates, making a left turn, hitting Tim, knocking him up onto the windshield, smashing it. He was hit 2 days before his mom was scheduled to visit.
He didn't even tap on his brake after he hit my son with his car. He just kept going and went home.
He was located a short time later by our officers, obviously intoxicated.
Renton Fire tried to save Tim's life, but he died at Harborview Medical Center. Prosecutors charged Morales Perez with vehicular homicide and hit-and-run felony. It was his second hit-and-run. Bail was initially set at $100,000. But then, at his arraignment 2 weeks later, Judge Joanna Bender agreed to lower it to $10,000, with only $1,000 cash needed to post bond. She made that decision before realizing that Tim's sister and mother had joined the court hearing via Zoom.
Were there any other conditions that the state wanted to address?
Yes, before the victim's family was on Zoom, and they also wanted to speak.
Oh, of course. I apologize.
Beth McIntyre argued against releasing Morales Perez.
I feel, and I think my family feels, that he remains a danger to the community and should stay in jail so he doesn't kill anybody else until his sentencing.
Judge Bender stood by her decision.
The law requires that I presume that anybody accused of a crime is innocent unless and until they are convicted or plead guilty. And related to that, the law requires that I presume that people should be released from jail before trial.
The next month, Morales-Perez was back in court, where prosecutors asked Judge Bender to remand him to jail because the county had a backlog on setting up his electronic home alcohol monitor. She ruled it's not his fault and denied the request to hold him.
So I'm going to allow your client to remain in the community, and in a significant exercise of trust on my part, I am going to believe that he is going to continue to engage in the good law-abiding behavior that he has been engaging in.
Then on November 8th, Morales-Perez failed to show up for a plea hearing, so a $200,000 warrant was issued for his arrest. Tim's family doubts they'll ever get justice for his hit-and-run death. Renton police say they believe Morales-Perez has fled to Mexico.
Oh my gosh. That's insane. Having spoke to so many families of victims, I can't even imagine. I mean, it's bad enough for that judge. I mean, the thing she said there, I have to believe he'll continue to engage in the good law-abiding behavior he's been engaged. What are you talking about? He's committed 2 hit and runs. He has a pending vehicular homicide for killing Tim Gertschmez. And you said that you were going to give him a lot of, what was the word? Significant exercise of trust. To believe that, despite them not being able to set him up for this electronic alcohol monitoring system, that he's going to continue to engage in the good behavior he's engaged in. He's a criminal. All he engages in is criminal behavior. He killed someone. $10,000 bail. And I would also say, this is also where the sanctuary policies come in. Because our systems and our internal systems essentially say that our criminal justice system treats someone who's here legally the same as someone who's here illegally. I bet she didn't even know. I bet it wasn't even on the form that he was in the country illegally, because they don't put those things. But I mean, leave it to me to tell a judge how to do their job. But she's completely wrong when she talks about the presumptions that she has to make as a judge. She's being, I think, intentionally obtuse. That, I have to presume innocent until proven guilty. There's a presumption of innocence, which is true, of course. There's a presumption that they should be released. But there are also tools you have at your disposal and standards that you are required to look at as a judge when determining what appropriate bail is. Their likelihood to reappear for court, and had we been able to say he's in the country illegally, that likelihood goes way, way down. And then, of course, the violent nature of his offense and the fact that he didn't even stay at the scene. He killed someone and he fled. So he fled the scene, and you don't think he'll flee from justice again? He's already fled from justice once. The danger he poses to the community is a standard that judge and every judge is supposed to weigh as well. He can kill someone in cold blood, driving drunk, and flee. And that's the second time he's committed a hit and run. This one was fatal. And you don't think that presents a significant risk of danger to the community? Good for David Rose, because that story is 7 minutes long. Just insane stuff. Worthy, I think, of a recall. I mean, how do we start to hold these judges accountable? I think there has to be recalls of them, recall efforts. I mean, this judge has been, and the other judge, who's the other soft on crime judge we just talked about? Veronica Galvin.
Yep. And David actually talks about recall. You can't recall a judge like this because she was appointed and then elected. You can't recall her. You have to, the families can submit complaints, but eventually that just has to go to the Supreme Court and they decide if they want to honor it or not.
I mean, at what point when you are, you have such a departure from kind of the accepted norms of our judicial system? And what she says there with her own words about, well, I have to presume innocence, and my hands are tied, and I have to presume that they have a constitutional right to be released. Yeah, you presume all of those things, and then you use the other factors to set an appropriate bail. I spent 5 years in courtrooms every single day covering crime and justice, where judges seem to be able to do that just fine. And rarely was there a bail ruling that was so absurdly low or high that we do a news story on it. Now it's almost every day. And a lot of it coming from two of the same judges. And they, obviously public shaming doesn't work. because she knows that stories are done on her all the time. And what is her response to those? Well, she sits from her pulpit and she shames the media and saying, you need to be more thoughtful in how you cover these things. Maybe you should be more thoughtful in the bail that you set. Maybe you should be more thoughtful in the role you play in keeping our community safe. And until you have Democratic lawmakers speak out about these things, nothing will change. If it's just, a few reports here and there, conservatives talking about it, nothing will change. That poor family. And I'm glad David noted that she made that determination of bail, $10,000, before she even heard from the family members of the victim. And then she said, oh, of course I want to hear from you. I'm not going to change my mind. But of course, your voice is very important. I mean, this stuff, to me, it should be criminal. It should be criminal. There should be some way where it's not driven by politics or ideology, some reasonable way to get these judges off the bench, to hold them accountable when someone goes out and commits other crimes. The one person who did it the other day, we gave her credit on the show, State Representative Lauren Davis, a Democrat from Shoreline, who Veronica Galvin was testifying in front of her committee in support of a bill that would give judges discretion to end long sentences and let people out of prison early. And Rep. Lauren Davis is like, hey, aren't you the judge who uses their discretion to take it easy on criminals? So why should we give you more discretion? I was like, thank God, a single Democrat has said what is very, very obvious. But there needs to be more of that. It's tough. I mean, I know I don't want judges to serve at the will and fancy of politicians or whatever it is. It should be a difficult process to unseat a judge so it doesn't turn into a political pissing match. But this is ridiculous. Even mainstream news knows how bad Judge Bender is, knows how bad Judge Veronica Galvin is. These are people who should not be in a position to make decisions about public safety whatsoever. I mean, that is just unbelievable. All right, speaking of unbelievable, a tampon revolt, the great tampon revolt of 2025. We shall talk about it next. Yes, men, we're talking about tampons. First, if you're thinking about selling your home, reach out to our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. Wes, one of the things that people always say about Wes, he's an excellent communicator. He is really good at making sure every step of the way home sellers are kept in the loop, that he's consulting them on whatever is happening, that he's getting their feedback, that he's moving forward in the way that they want to move forward. We heard that from unDivided listener Sue, who told us she was a bit hesitant to list her home in the winter, but Wes put her at ease.
It's time for me to go home, back to Wenatchee. That's where my mom is, and she's getting up there in age. So I need to help her and start thinking about my own retirement. So
did you feel get the sense that Wes had a plan, knew what he was talking about? I mean, how comfortable did he make you during the process?
Oh, he made me feel very comfortable. He answered all my questions and he responded to them by email or text, whatever I needed. Just kind of an extra helping hand here and there whenever I needed it. He was always there to support me, and his team is just wonderful.
And she got a quick offer for over list price that she simply couldn't refuse. And so on her way to Wenatchee she is. Sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com, a better way to sell your home. All right, a little bit of national news for you. This is one of those things, I saw it on X, and I'll say, misinformation is sort of common on social media these days. So occasionally I see certain influencers who push things out on X and I'm like, I don't believe a thing they say. This was so ridiculous when I saw it that I'm like, that's probably fake. So I went on and I looked up the article myself, and no, indeed it was real. This is an article, honest to God, hand to God, from the New York Times. With tampons in code, Silicon Valley workers quietly protest tech's rightward shift. It says, as Mark Zuckerberg and other tech titans have embraced President Trump and muffled internal dissent at their companies, their mostly left-leaning employees have objected with subtle acts of defiance. Subtle acts of defiance, such as putting tampons back in the men's bathrooms. I kid you not. It says, quietly but unmistakably, the tampons, liners, and pads reappeared in many of the men's restrooms at Meta's offices. Days earlier, Mark Zuckerberg, Meta's chief executive, had made a series of changes at his company, aligning with President Trump's new administration. As part of the moves, Mr. Zuckerberg eliminated diversity initiatives in the workplace, something that Mr. Trump had criticized, and removed sanitary products from the men's bathrooms, which had been provided for transgender and non-binary employees who may have required them. To protest Mr. Zuckerberg's actions, actions, some Meta workers soon brought their own tampons, pads, and liners to the men's bathrooms. 5 people with knowledge of the effort said, I love the way they're sourcing this out. 5 people with knowledge of the effort told us that they snuck tampons into the men's bathroom. It says a group of employees also circulated a petition to save the tampons. The sanitary products were emblematic of the quiet rebellions that Silicon Valley workers have staged as they grapple with the rightward shift of their bosses. Have you ever in your life read such an unserious piece of journalism? Just the drama with which they paint this picture of this rebellion inside Meta.
Right.
Where they snuck, like, I just picture these, like, Meta nerds, right? Purple hair or whatever it is. Like, army crawling into the bathroom. And, like a grenade, like, pulling the string of the tampon, opening the door and hurling it in. That's, like, what I picture. Is just this covert operation under cover of darkness.
I like
to
that
sneak
picture.
pads and tampons back into the men's bathroom. Also, who uses pads anymore?
Well, I'm sure there are some people, but definitely not the ones they put in those bathrooms.
Yeah.
The cheap ones.
Wow.
Don't you avoid those at all cost?
You do. And also the, I want to know who's choosing the tampons. Should we do tampon talk? Like, is it the good kind with the applicator, or is it the kind like our grandparents used where it's like a piece of cotton that you just got to grin and bear it?
Okay. Nobody wants to know this stuff.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was.
You guys know what I mean, though. You know what I mean.
I was recently at the airport with John Curley, who has no shame and no embarrassment at all that registers, and he came out of the bathroom smoking a tampon because there were tampons in there. And I was like, put that away.
Oh my God.
Yeah, in the airports, everywhere. It's just insane.
I mean, seriously, the sanitary products were emblematic of the quiet rebellions that Silicon Valley workers have staged as they grapple with the rightward shift of their bosses. You wonder why there's a rightward shift. It's because you all are running nighttime raids in men's bathrooms to restock the tampons. It's just like,
number one, if you are going through that transition, aren't you taking medication that probably stops that from happening anyway?
Well, so it would be
a lot of times. It would be,
you'd be looking
female
at
to male.
Yeah, well, obviously, because males don't have periods, and even if you get surgical changes to become a female, you're not going to have a period either.
Right.
It was like Dylan Mulvaney, who like was, I have tampons, like day 50 of girlhood. You really want to cosplay a girl and talk about if you want a period, by all means have it.
Yeah.
Like something we actually legitimately suffer with for years of our lives, and you want to cosplay that you have periods. You know how weird and offensive and insulting that is?
It is.
But like, by all means, if you want to go through the steps of inserting it wherever, because that makes you feel more like a woman, by all means, but like, leave us out of it. The New York Times.
Agreed.
Laughable. All right. Sorry for the tampon
I can't believe
talk,
this world.
gentlemen. How many viewers did we lose on the live feed during the tampon talk? All right, it is Thursday. There's some internal squabbles within the Republican Party in Florida. Let's talk about it in our weekly segment, Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello, happy Thursday.
Hello, and happy Thursday.
Wow, you're really buttoned up. Every button on that shirt is buttoned.
Yes.
We are just respectable women.
Yes, we are.
No selling sex here. This is not OnlyFans. So we're talking about a Republican feud in Florida, which I kind of love because here all our Republican Party does is fight each other. So I'm glad we're not the only ones. So kind of in a nutshell, Republicans in the legislature in Florida have crafted an immigration bill to deal with illegal immigration, and DeSantis thinks it's weak.
Yeah, exactly. DeSantis wants this bill to represent everything that he had talked about in that press conference we covered I think it was last week.
Yeah.
And the bill that the Republicans had put forth and passed that DeSantis is threatening to veto, it doesn't include a few things. And two of those things would be restricting these illegal immigrants from sending money out of the country. And then the other one is about the flight risk and imposing bail on criminals. And I'm not really sure why. To me, those two things make sense, but those are the two that they're just did not put strong enough wording into the bill. So now DeSantis is kind of like, has to face either signing a bill that he has openly said is toothless and weak, or forcing them to go back and rewrite it.
I think he'll probably force him to go back because, I mean, if he's taken such a strong position on the illegal immigration, he's trying to be lockstep with Trump. That would be it would be a weak showing for him to be like, okay. And I've seen a lot of conservatives on X criticizing that bill and the language in that bill. The bail thing is kind of a no-brainer. I don't get why, just for a recap for people, basically it would say that, you know, if you're in the country illegally, there's an assumption you're a flight risk. And so you'd be held without bail. And I understand that if you're in this country, you have constitutional rights. I mean, you're subject to our jurisdiction. And so you do have some rights, even if you're not an American. But that's just a no-brainer to me. I mean, if they're facing a serious crime, there's nothing stopping them from fleeing to another country if you give them bail.
It's true. I think maybe there's other steps that need to be put in place before that they're even able to enforce that kind of a law against immigrants. Like you said, they have a constitutional right because they're here.
Yeah.
Maybe they just don't want to deal with any, violations of those rights.
Like lawsuits or anything like that.
Lawsuits, yeah.
And I mean,
so maybe there's just more, the verbiage just probably isn't where it needs to be enforceable.
Yeah. But the whole thing of not sending money out of the country, a lot of people come here illegally to help family members back home. They do come here and work, but they came here illegally. There's a lot of people come here legally and work, and then sending money back home. So if you get rid of that, the incentive is gone. And so if we're talking about stopping the flow of illegal immigration, that's a huge incentive. So I hope DeSantis vetoes it. I think the country wants us to be stronger on immigration, and certainly in Florida. Speaking of immigration, I've been watching, these ICE roundups and stuff, and a lot of them, Central American nationals, Mexican nationals, but also in Florida, 2 high-profile instances of Chinese nationals.
Yeah, just this week, there's been 2 incidences. Both were reported on see something, say something tips that somebody saw something, called him in, and they turned out to be absolutely what they suspected they saw. So in one incident, it was a civilian saw a suspicious boat park at a private marina and unload over almost 2 dozen people and shove them into vans. And so when the police caught up with those vans, they found over 2 dozen Chinese migrants. And then the smugglers were of Cuban, Puerto Rican, and Haitian descent. And then the same thing, just a few days later, another tip came in. Somebody saw a man shoving a bunch of women into a Toyota. And when the police caught up with that tip, it was the Toyota and a van, again, full of Chinese migrants.
Yeah, last thing we need is Chinese nationals being snuck into our country. And, this kind of reminds me, this whole, we kind of talked about it off the top of the show, my frustration about making certain things political and rushes to blame. Every side wants to blame the person that's on the other side, right? But people need to understand that a lot of the damage has been done when it comes to national security and what happened at the southern border. There are an untold number of people who were on terrorist watch lists who have entered our country. I mean, we know about the ones they caught. How many did they not catch? And so they're here. And in a lot of instances, we don't know where they are. And so I can already predict what's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of attack on our homeland by someone who came across the border illegally. Democrats are going to say, I guess Trump didn't make our country safer or whatever it is. But the reality is some of these people are going to be very, very hard to find until they surface. And by the time they surface, it might be too late. And Lord only knows what some of these Chinese nationals are doing here. Crazy stuff. And also proves Ron DeSantis's point. Like maybe that bill needs to be strengthened a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. I'm with you. I hope he stands his ground a little bit on that and makes sure that especially right now when Trump has called for a lot of strength, there's no reason to weaken these bills, especially in those 2 regards.
Yeah.
It seems like those are the 2 points he made that would be the least of their worries. So I'm not sure why they're pushing back on that.
Yeah, constitutional stuff. I always want people to abide by the Constitution, but surely like the flight risk issue is allowed in bail. It's reasonable bail. And so it's reasonable to believe that they'd flee the country. But anyway, interesting stuff. All right, Miranda, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.
It's not even controversial anymore. People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
I'm glad the Republicans fight in Florida and not just in Washington state. You know, you like to see it once in a while. A little internal strife is healthy. All right, let's talk about our daily subscriber show poll quick, which we put out every day, show day, for subscribers on Patreon, Locals, and X. I asked you guys about this HB 1380, really the spirit behind it. I said, do you believe state law should govern what standards a city may use to clear public homeless encampments, or should that be decided at the local level? Nicole, state or local?
Oh, I hadn't really thought about it.
Well, there's only one correct answer.
Well, yeah. So, state.
That's the incorrect
Clear 'em
answer. Yeah, but if the state was governed by people who wanted to clear them all.
Yeah, no, I think local cities are responsible. That way you can, I think, you know, you can adjust where you live, I guess, accordingly.
Right. You can have the approach that you think is fitting. Now, I heard, so on Patreon, Michelle said, and I get the point of this, she said, I voted state because I think they should set the correct high-level precedent, but then local should have control to enforce how that gets done. The issue is, and like for a state, I mean, if you got Jay Inslee, who, you know, is going to spend 12 years hands off, and we're just, we're not clearing anybody, and you have all these cities that are dealing with such different issues, whose residents might have different tolerance levels for clearing homeless encampments, I say you let them do it. And if they get sued as a result, they get sued. But now you're basically pushing down a state law that makes it easier for them to get sued. That's just crazy. Ollie Rohde says King County Democrats shouldn't be making any decisions that affect local control of anything. I absolutely agree, especially when they clearly can't control. Look, if you had state lawmakers who came from districts where they were absolutely handling the homeless crisis like champs, okay, you tell us how we should deal with it then. But that's not what we have. Let me see. Danny J. Perhaps making the state responsible both in practice and financially would move the needle on homelessness. Similar reasoning to having the governor appoint the head of OSPI. But would it move the needle? I mean, right now the state's responsibility on homelessness is essentially state right-of-ways. And look at how Governor Inslee handled it. Once it got so bad, where it's like you got tents lining I-5 on the drive to Olympia, very visible, then he finally did something, pushes this right-of-way initiative and spends $500,000 to $1 million per person to get them out of homelessness. Their response has utterly failed. Joel says giving more power to the state for anything is a bad idea. Bill says it should be a shared responsibility with good results, not what we have had. Yeah, I think we know by now, laws that require you to leave more homeless people in place is not going to improve the situation that we're in. DG says local control so the residents can see the impact of the officials they voted for and can't push the blame off on a nebulous entity. So yeah, there's a little bit of responsibility there for local entities as well. I agree. Good points all. And Nicole, you can choose whatever you want. If you really believe state, that's totally fine.
No, I mean, I kind of agree on the setting guidelines, but then the cities can kind of adjust accordingly to their specific needs.
Yeah.
Kind of like we do that as a country, right? That's why we give it to the states, and then you choose accordingly where you want to live, I guess.
Well, and it's, there's already, more or less guidelines when it comes to what's constitutional for what you can do with homelessness. Like we had the Grants Pass decision that came down. And before the Grants Pass decision, we were kind of having to adjust our rules around a federal court ruling in Idaho that basically said you can move people, but you have to have a place for them to go. So, there are already general standards based on case law that cities have to follow if they don't want to be sued. So they're going to have to follow those things. But Grants Pass, for instance, gave cities a lot of latitude to be able to move homeless encampments out of public spaces. So the state doesn't need to go in there and set its own standards. Let the courts do that. All right, we'll get to our sanity check and your questions/comments coming up. First, when we have Zach Abraham on with Bulwark Capital every week, he always talks about Taiwan semiconductors when he's talking about the markets and what's driving the markets and AI and all of that. Well, you know who else talked about Taiwan semiconductors the other day? President Donald Trump. He had some thoughts on moving some of the production in Taiwan semiconductors to the United States. So I asked Zach Abraham about that. Zach Abraham, welcome back to Undivided.
Always good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you always talk about Taiwan semiconductors. And so I want you to listen to this news from President Donald Trump.
In the very near future, we're going to be placing tariffs on foreign production of computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to return production of these essential goods to the United States of America. They left us and they went to Taiwan, which is about 98% of the chip business, by the way. And we want them to come back. And we don't want to give them billions of dollars like this ridiculous program that Biden has. Give everybody billions of dollars. They already have billions of dollars. They've got nothing but money, Joe. They didn't need money. They needed an incentive. And the incentive is going to be they're not going to want to pay a 25, 50, or even 100% tax. The only way you'll get out of this is to build your plant. If you want to stop paying the taxes or the tariffs, you have to build your plant right here in America. That's what's going to happen at record levels.
We talk a lot when we're talking about markets, et cetera, about NVIDIA, about Taiwan Semiconductors, about AI and how it plays in the market. So when Donald Trump says that that's their plan, what impact has it had or should we expect it to have?
I don't think that you're going to see it have a big impact in the overall stock market, just because, again, you might see some gyrations here or there, but a diversification of manufacturing is theoretically better for everybody, right? Everybody in the world. If a country gets shut down again for a pandemic or whatever, there's other options. There's other places to go, and the fact that the whole world outsourced so much stuff to China is just ridiculous in the sense that they were doing it. They were just blinded by profit and cheap labor, and everybody forgot. Wait a sec, and it's not to the point where it's not even the Chinese people's fault, right? Like, if everybody's going to outsource to one country, what happens when that country has a problem? It's just dumb. But again, if you look at our foreign policy over the last 30 years, dumb is the only word that is consistently applicable. So, at least we're consistent, I guess.
Yeah. Forgive me, Zach, if this is a naive question. If we go from making the bulk of those in Taiwan to making so many of them here, labor is much more expensive in the United States. So wouldn't that drive costs up?
See, and this is what I was getting to earlier. To some degree, Taiwan does not have as much cheap labor as China does. So the delta between us and their labor costs isn't going to be as high. You remove shipping costs here domestically. So there's a couple ways that you're getting some of that cost back. But remember, one of the things, and this is one of the things that, and I'm looking at all the idiotic questions. Everyone's asking why even on Capitol Hill, in these congressional hearings, they're asking why the cost of eggs hasn't dropped yet, right? These people they're just idiots.
Real struggles.
Oh my God. Well, all I would say to them is, hey guys, you made a hell of a mess over the last 4 years. It's going to take us more than a week to clean it up. So just please be patient, right? Took you 4 years to make the mess. It's going to take us a little bit longer to clean it up.
Yeah.
But no, there will be some trade-offs though, right? Like when we bring back manufacturing, things will be more expensive here. But, right, what does that also mean? It also means that you have a lot more people here that will be making livable wages, which means they can buy more stuff, which means they can afford more house. They can afford higher interest rates on mortgages, right? Less people on welfare, more income tax being generated. So there's trade-offs. And this is why I was saying that I think the administration should get out ahead of this and say, guys, it's not just inflation. It's inflation versus growth. And because of the mess they made, using Barack Obama, his old adage, elections have consequences. You elected an idiot, a diaper-confined, idiot as president for 4 years, and he made a mess. And an election does not erase the mess that he made, that you voted for. Give us some time to clean it up. But here's the thing. Inflation's going to stay a little higher than we like for a while. That's why we're going to try to address it on the cost-cutting side and the regulatory cutting side, right? That helps lower cost of operations to help offset that. And now now we're on a path where you're like, okay, we can do this. If we constrain spending, right? Ideally keep it paused, but I doubt that will happen. And allow the economy time and the revenue side, the tax revenue side time to come up. And the way, like we've talked about before, the way you counter, because when government spending goes down, government spending isn't all bad, right? It feeds directly into the economy. Okay, so when government spending drops, if you don't want the economy to decline, you've got to offset it somehow, right? And I just think that that's where you've got to attack it, because keep this in mind. 10 years ago, just so people understand the proliferation of regulation over the last 15 years. 10 years ago, California had 10,000 regulations on the books. Okay. Today they have 50,000. Right? 5x in 10 years. Now, the rest of the country isn't as bad as California, but that's why these regulatory pullbacks are going to matter so much, because you have to do that to offset the spending cuts from the government. But, if you do that and you can stick to it, you can bring down inflation over time. But if you want to bring down inflation without crashing the economy, you're going to have to take some, And I think he's doing that, right? All of these things the administration is talking about, I think they're aware of it, but inflation's going to be, it's going to be stubborn. And, when you splash the pot and hand out, increase your money supply by 40% in the space of 12 months, it takes longer than a week to fix it.
Yeah, got a lot of work to do. Zach actually is having one of his free live webinars today. You can still sign up. Just go to knowyourriskradio.com. Knowyourriskradio.com. He's going to be talking about what's ahead for 2025, like what kind of economic gains Trump might be able to make, how quickly, et cetera, and then Trump's economic policy and how that might impact your retirement portfolio. So just some good to know information. You can sign up, knowyourriskradio.com, knowyourriskradio.com. It's happening at 3:30, so you've got some time to do that. All right, let's get to some of your questions, comments. Thank you guys for your, a lot of super chats today. Somebody was asking me, how do I do a super chat? If you're watching the YouTube live feed there, you can do a super chat on YouTube if you like, but you don't have to. Your subscription to our show is enough. Now, if you're not subscribed to our show, then yeah, you got to drop the occasional super chat in. It's up to you. Kenneth Bates, $50 super chat in appreciation of your efforts. Thank you. Brandi Deal, $5 super chat. Maynard Jeffers with a $1.99 super chat. Thank you. Matt Gilbert, everyone needs to contact their representatives because I have Senator Emily Alvarado and Representative Joe Fitzgibbon and Representative Breonna Thomas, and they sure as hell aren't going to listen to me. You never know, I guess. But yes, contacting your representatives, there's nothing bad that can come from it. Letting them know why you oppose or support a certain policy. Barron says, purely homicidal empathy that this judge has, 100%. They hand out the tools of death so people slowly kill themselves while virtue signaling lefties pat each other on the back. Couldn't agree more. Bill Biz, wow, Brandi, just watched back Kennedy's confirmation message. I totally agree that his message was exceptional and his motivation positive. I hope he is confirmed. Also, Kash Patel has his hearings today. There's so much going on. Tulsi Gabbard, they were having their hearings starting as Trump was giving a press conference on the plane crash. So much going on. Let me see. Kyle T. Hey, all. Brandi, any chance you'll be talking about Senate Bill 5583? It was just introduced. It would increase costs of hunting and fishing licenses and remove admin fee limits for unreturned catch record cards, etc. I had not heard about that. I know I got an email the other day I need to look back at about people with hunting and fishing concerns. It's an issue we've covered before, but I'll take a look at that bill, Kyle. I had not heard about it. Night Wolf, I was telling my wife last night the next thing the Dems will go after is a tax on breathing. Well, they are pushing that tax on cow farts. So, cow farts, breathing. They'll calculate how much CO2 a person emits, assign a value, then tax us. Yeah, wouldn't rule it out. Lynn Blevins, my first thought was, yay, we have a president that actually makes statements and doesn't hide from the public. Then he rambled on. When he rambled on, I thought, just stop. Exactly. He's doing so well. He just needs to limit his words and walk away while he's ahead. Matt Gilbert, the great tampon revolt was a bloody affair. Good one. I like that. I put it in there. Nicole's like, I'm surprised you read that message. Karen, Louisiana just passed or is passing a bill that teachers have to pass a citizenship test. There's a lot of standards that I think teachers need to go through that maybe they're not in Washington State. Adorable Deplorable, Miranda looking like she's auditioning for the next Matrix. Yeah, she was all buttoned up today. She looked like an assassin or like an Antifa assassin in all black. That's all right. She pulls everything off. All right. Okay, with that, let's get to our closing sanity check, which takes us to the city of Chicago today. So, of course, some of the ICE raids that have been happening in the city of Chicago, where they've rounded up some very dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens. And, of course, as most Democratic mayors are, just losing their ever-loving minds. How dare the feds come in here and target people who are victimizing our citizens? So the mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, was essentially complaining about ICE and the raids and all of that. But he was asked a very good, reasonable question by a reporter in the room.
Tom Homan showed up in Chicago and within 24 hours found a convicted sex offender who has been living in our city since 2009, flouting the sex offender registry. If he can do this, why can't you?
Because that's their job. That is their job. The federal
Their
government
job's not to keep
has
the
a
people of Chicago
responsibility
safe.
to make sure that individuals who are undocumented, who have been charged with, convicted of a crime, it is the federal government's responsibility to do their part and uphold the law. Our local police department, along with our public health department, along with our other sister agencies, are working to build a better, stronger, safer Chicago. And as we've stated repeatedly, those critical investments, you continue to see the results of those investments as violent crime continues to fall in Chicago.
So, in other words, it's not my fault and it's not my job. You know, and he is right that it's the job of the federal government to round up illegal immigrants, criminal aliens. But you know what would make that job a hell of a lot easier? If you weren't a sanctuary city that's offering them protection. That has been your closing sanity check for today. That has been today's episode of Undivided. We've got a great episode of Sundays with Subscribers coming up. We're going to have in Mario Lotmore, who is the editor-in-chief of the Linwood Times. We're going to talk about local independent journalism and some of the flack he's getting from elected officials for simply doing his job. So we'll have that coming up. If you have not signed up to become a supporter of the show already, please do so. It just costs $5 a month. It allows us to do this work full time. You can sign up, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. We will have a new episode of Politics Unpacked out tomorrow. Gives you a sense in a short little 10-minute package of everything that happened in the legislative session this week. There's a lot to discuss. And then for subscribers, we'll see you Sunday on Sundays with Subscribers. Have a fantastic weekend, everyone.